Welcome to Amplify, the podcast for accounting firm growth. I'm your host, Chris Camara. Today we're discussing digital advertising with Sean Smith, the Chief Marketing Officer at Schneider Downs. Sean oversees the strategic development, direction, and implementation of all marketing efforts for the top 100 firm. Sean today will discuss what works and what doesn't in digital ads. Sean, thank you so much for coming on the show today. But before we jump in, why don't you tell us a little more about yourself?
Certainly, and thank you for having me, Chris. My name is Sean Smith. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Schneider Downs. I'm a native Pittsburgher. I've lived here all my life. I've been at Schneider Downs for almost 17 years, and before that, I actually spent about 20 years in the advertising agency business, which officially makes me an old guy, but also makes me maybe a veteran of the marketing industry here in Pittsburgh, and we have offices in Columbus and Washington, D.C. So I've enjoyed over the last 17 years being part of this fascinating business, which is marketing accounting. Not what I thought I'd be doing with my life. Nobody grows up and says, I'm going to be an accounting marketer. And I've absolutely adored the last 15 years.
Yeah, it's been a journey, huh?
Roll out the red carpet. Celebrate your professionals. Be seen. At Ingenuity Marketing Group, we personalize your approach to attract talent and win business. In our world, accounting professionals are the celebrities. That means branding, PR, and content that ranks you higher. For visibility, faster marketing ROI, and more time in your day, contact our in-house specialists at ingenuitymarketing.com.
So tell me, how are firms using digital advertising in their marketing efforts? And why is this an important strategy that may be overlooked?
Well, digital is important for several reasons, and we'll start with the premise that if you're advertising, it's to sell a service to an audience. So great. So how do we find those audiences? And I referenced that I'm an old guy. Back early in my career, what would we do? We'd place an ad in a newspaper or a printed magazine or maybe a radio ad. Some businesses would use direct mail and put it on people's desks. But today those mediums have changed. Maybe you get your news from an online newspaper, but more likely you have a fragmented circulation of websites that you go through to find your information, or even social media. Similarly, we're listening less to radio stations and we stream more. And even the print mail industry has essentially collapsed, because of the advent of electronic mail. So the audience isn't consuming less media, and they might be consuming more, but they're consuming different media, and digital represents what that new media is. And so if we want to capture the attention of our target audiences, we have to migrate to their media habits so we can capture their attention. So digital advertising is dynamic, it's highly measurable, and it's highly targetable. And so for that reason, it's very effective for lead generation. And that's why it has become such an important and popular option for firms in our industry.
Yeah, so do they work, though? I guess this is what we really want to get down to, right? I think a lot of accountants think that if the ad reaches 20,000 people, then a great number of those people will reach out, but that's not how it works, right? So how do you gauge success?
Well, it's interesting. We debated how it works, or if it works, back in the old days of television, print, and newspapers and all those types of things. It's a question you've always asked. There's a great adage in advertising: 50% of my budget is wasted, but the problem is I don't know which 50%. So I can't wave a magic wand and make that go away. But in the old days, you'd run a radio ad, and when it was over, it just kind of went out into the atmosphere. Digital's totally different because the call to action is embedded in the ad and it's trackable. So defining work, did it work, is important. It depends why you're advertising. Is it to build brand awareness? Is it to drive traffic to the website, or to prevent an event or a white paper? At the risk of being a marketing wonk, we'll call that a key performance indicator or KPI. And knowing what we want to happen is critical in knowing if it worked. I want to get leads from people who are interested in international tax issues, or I want people to register for my newsletter. I want to showcase a video of our CEO making a big announcement, or I want people in a 4-county area with high incomes to know that we have a wealth management practice. Each of those are deliverables, and the digital advertising works if it delivers on that. It's not really how many people saw it anymore, because we're really being specific. And in fact, in some cases, if you're doing social media advertising, you're almost advertising to one person at a time rather than the mythical 20 people who are listening to a radio station, because you're being so segmented and so targeted. It's a rifle shot. It's not a scatter gun. And that makes budgeting, prioritizing a real challenge. So I tell people, stay focused on that KPI. Digital ads offer the benefit of measurability. Your call to action's a link, and you're going to know if they acted. So if you have a landing page with a special offer or some way for people to fill out a form, you're going to capture that name and build a further communication with them. I work for accountants. They like metrics. So you can measure response daily, weekly, monthly. And the other neat thing about digital advertising is you can shift on the fly. If you're running an ad in a biweekly news journal, from week to week, you have to wait 2 weeks so you can change it. Here, if I discover that one ad's working better than another, I can put more assets into the one than the other. I can make those changes. It's just a completely different thing, especially for someone like me who's used to tertiary and old school advertising. It's much faster, just like the rest of the world.
Right. Interesting. So what type of ad to run? How do you determine that? And talk me through that process of how you evaluate your options, decide where to place the ad, with what frequency, et cetera. That's got to be tricky, I would think, or a little complicated. I don't know. How do you do it?
Well, it's funny. If this was a video, would flash a sign saying oversimplification forthcoming. But we'll kind of consider ads for a couple of different reasons. There's building the brand. There's general visibility, staying in touch with people, and then there's building the business, generating leads. And there's lots of other reasons. There's recruiting, lots of other reasons to do advertising. But from my perspective, those might be the ones I focus on. And as we get deeper into our digital journey, we're finding that we use digital advertising more for lead generation than for general brand awareness. And I feel that's where it's most trackable and beneficial. We'll still use some mass media for branding. It's an efficient way to reach a broader market. But digital allows me to be so focused that it becomes very valuable for lead generation. It's great that you asked about frequency and such, because that's a critical question. I stress this. Digital is cheap. It's super cheap, but it's a volume play. Depending on how you're buying media, you might be buying ads rotating on a website, or you might be paying per click, and we'll talk deeper about that in a minute. But we might be excited if 5% of our ads get clicked. And to get that 5%, I might have to expose somebody to the ad 10 times before they do click. So, you have to get thick skin and realize that this means 95% of our ads aren't getting clicked, but they are getting seen. And so that's when the fun of creating compelling advertising or an interesting message, or at least being focused, is really important. Because maybe somebody sees it, they don't click the first 3 or 4 times, but they click on it the 5th time. That's sort of the gamble. But that's why it's so cheap, and that's why placement and targeting is so important.
So tell me, what kinds of advertising have you tried? You just alluded to that a little bit. Pay-per-click, social media, what kind of stuff where have you had the most success?
Okay, perfect. So, from my perspective, most of what we do is one of 3 types of ads. One would be display ads, and that's just like a traditional print ad. That's a branding ad. They're typically awareness ads that you can put on the website, maybe on the homepage of your local newspaper or your local business journal. And that can be about your brand, or can be about a service or an industry niche that you're in. But those are awareness ads, and you're placing your ad on other people's websites. We also use targeted social ads. Chris, the fact that I can target CFOs of mid-market manufacturing companies in Western Pennsylvania and put my ad in their LinkedIn feed when they're on there, and it waits until they're on there to put it in there, that's really intriguing. Or I can purchase cybersecurity ads to reach CISOs of community banks across the country, or find owners of craft brewers of a certain size. So those are the targeted social ads, and they can leverage You can leverage LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. We're mostly doing LinkedIn. We tend to stay professional, but that's where we're doing that. And then the third option, which a lot of people have heard about, would be pay-per-click, and maybe we call it Google advertising. And this is an ideal option if you're targeting an audience that is going to be researching on Google for a very specific term. For example, cybersecurity would be much too broad because everybody's searching that, even consumers. But perhaps they're searching for a specific cyber service, penetration testing, which is sort of ethical hacking. And perhaps we know that that's specifically important to banks. So we could buy pay-per-click ads for penetration, anybody who's searching penetration testing for banks. And then we would appear, our ad or our listing would appear on the resulting search page at the top, identified as an ad, but would have a paragraph about our service. Maybe get a free assessment if you need penetration testing or something like that. Now, we would only pay for that being on that page doesn't cost us anything. If they click on it, they come to our page, and then we will pay. So essentially, it's actually, and this is a whole separate podcast, it's basically a live auction. We might not be the only people offering to buy the term penetration testing for banks, but we will get our share of at-bats in this. And you can make that geographically centered. You can make it national. You can do it however you want, and you can set your limits. But the point being, you do not pay unless they click on your ad, which at least means with pay-per-click that you're guaranteed that they're going to hit your website and you're going to know about it. And so that's very effective if you have a specific niche area you're trying to capture attention to. And I think you might have referenced retargeting, which can be a really great strategy. Through this approach, once somebody's clicked on one of your ads, whether that is a display ad, a social ad, or a pay-per-click ad, through cookies and such, you are aware of the fact that they've expressed an interest, and you can send them a second ad. I call this the Zappos law. If you ever look at a pair of shoes, and 2 days later you're on a different website completely, and up pops that same pair of shoes, that's retargeting. The concept here is you're paying twice to advertise to the same person, but that person has already identified themselves as somebody with an interest in the topic. And so it can be, that second ad can be an efficient purchase. So basically, display ads, social media targeting, and pay-per-click are the three primary vehicles we use the most.
It's amazing how targeted you can get. Yeah, interesting.
And maybe a little scary.
Yeah, right. So tell me about content. What have you learned about content? I'm sure you've tried different tones, different styles. Does anything work better than anything else?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly, one of the reasons digital surpassed regular media is because we're an immediate consumer now of, using that term broadly. Everything's faster, and that results in we're in the era of a short attention span. We've tried lots of different types of approaches, but the one constant is that less is more. A single impactful concept or idea within an ad is more resonant than trying to explain your product or service to them in multiple paragraphs. They're not going to read it. As a very verbose person, and as somebody used to traditional advertising, that was something I had to learn. And I had to chalk up our investments. I call it tuition, because you're always learning. And so it's probably more tuition than it was an investment in our brand. But what we've really learned is you only get a few seconds. And a fundamental principle of advertising is that we're hijacking the audience when they're doing something else. If you're watching a TV show, the commercial interrupts what you're watching. If you're in a magazine, you're reading an article and here comes this ad. It's the same on digital. You're on a website for a reason. You're reading an article, you're looking for information, you're entertaining yourself, and here comes an ad. So we need to be quick because we only get them for a fleeting moment. We need to be concise with our message. And if we do it effectively, when they click, we can reward them for their attention. If they at least showed an interest, have that landing page deliver quickly. Here's a white paper. Here's an opportunity, a special offer. Here's an invitation for a free assessment, whatever those things would be. And so what we have found is, as a guy who used to work on creative ads for consumers, not all of this is super fun and creative. This is to the point. This is identifying that if someone's going to click on this ad, it is because they're in the market and they are interested in learning about this new international tax legislation and whether it's going to impact them. And so that's we have found that display ads have the lowest click-through rate in everything we do. But they are typically, when you're running this, you have guaranteed impressions. You know how many people will see it. So we can at least be creative or provocative to break through there. We know they're not going to click through as many times, but they'll see it. So having something that stops them in their tracks, even if they're not compelled to click, they'll be compelled to learn. Whereas with our other ads, social media ads, pay-per-click ads, they're a little more technical, a little more precise, a little more promising what we will deliver if you click on that ad. I have found, interestingly, we found that LinkedIn readers are more likely to read a longer ad. Their average visit times when they click on an ad, they stay longer. And we can be more technical with our landing pages. We have dabbled with Facebook, and Facebook will deliver more clicks, interestingly. But those clicks tend to be shorter. And I think that makes sense. I think Facebook exists maybe more as a social media. And whereas LinkedIn, I think people tend to be a little more professionally minded when they're on there. So that makes a little bit of sense. So we've tried to find that balance of investment because in some cases, it's good to get lots of eyeballs. If if you're geographically centered to a certain audience and you can get them, at least they come to the website, and Facebook can do that. But we've found LinkedIn tends to get maybe a little more engaged audience for us.
What suggestions do you have for firms when it comes to setting a digital advertising budget? So you can spend a little, you can spend a lot, right? So what makes sense?
Here's my best recommendation, which is start slow and monitor. I referenced the fact that the most interesting to me aspect of digital is the fact that you can turn it on, turn it off. You can monitor it daily, weekly, monthly, however you want. So blowing your budget in a week, if you were announcing a sale, if you're, Macy's, you're putting your ad out there everywhere right away so everybody understands right now this is new. Or in the Super Bowl, they spent all that money because they had a big audience, they wanted to tell everybody right away. And digital's not going to work like that. So you have the ability to make adjustments as you go. So start slow and taper up. We're big proponents of A/B testing. I'll say it that way, which is if we're going to do an ad, we're going to do a couple different ads, and they're going to have different landing pages. We might do 3 or 4 different ads, so it's A, B, C, D. And we're going to monitor which of these are getting traction, or if we're doing pay-per-click, we're going to have a lot of search terms, and they're not all going to hit. So in that first week or two, with a modest investment, and I can put a cap on, do not spend more than $100 a day for 2 weeks. At the end of those 2 weeks, I can look and I've got 14 days worth of evidence to say, okay, which of these ads are getting more traction? It looks like more people are clicking on this ad than this ad, and I can adjust my investment there. Or I might say none of this is working. Now, I'd propose that 2 weeks is too short of a time to judge whether an ad's working. I think you have to give it a month. We typically go with 2 months, but you can constantly make those adjustments. So I think that, I want to reemphasize, pay-per-click will let you put a cap on it. So, budgeting is kind of interesting. You want to know, how much, and every firm's different, every ROI is different. There's no magic number that is a budget. I do start with a budget, but what I can tell you is I spend less than 5% of my budget in those first couple of weeks because I want to learn and I want to know when I start spending the real money and I have to start answering to my bosses, I want to be able to explain why we have these. A real quick example, if I'm not running too long, we're doing a pay-per-click advertisement right now that is about the California ESG legislation, which is if you do business in California, you're going to have some ESG reporting issues. And what we found was when we ran these ads, we had lots and lots of click-throughs. Remember, when they click, we're paying. But a majority of those ads were in California. And what we thought about was, that makes sense. But our greatest value all the way over in Pittsburgh and in Columbus, Ohio, is we probably want to talk to people closer to home. So we removed California from that buy. We said if they're in California, because you know what, they've got a lot more local experts in their area. The likelihood of them, they're taking our information and moving on. So that allowed us to make that adjustment and make them, and that was 60% of the clicks. So all of a sudden, from the same budget, I was able to reallocate that and get a greater concentration of clicks that were more likely to yield results for us.
Yeah, it sounds like you can really adjust on the fly, which is sort of the beauty of it. So let me ask you about something that's a lot of fun. I've seen some fun stuff on LinkedIn about this, but tell me about your partnership with the Columbus Blue Jackets hockey team. So what do you have up your sleeve for digital advertising there?
This is a lot of fun, and thank you for asking about it. Schneider Downs as a firm has always identified that sports marketing can be an effective partner for us here in Pittsburgh with the Steelers and the Penguins, more on an advertising standpoint. But it's live programming. These are iconic brands in our markets, and associating ourselves with those brands introduces us to new people. And Columbus is a priority growth market for us. And as we were looking at that, we were looking for different ways to sort of break through and talk to lots of people. The Columbus Blue Jackets approached us with some really creative ideas. It is not a traditional sports partnership. I don't think there's any tickets involved. This is mostly visibility and, again, partnering with them on their events within the community, introducing us to their business partners. There's lots of clever ideas there, but it's still non-traditional. Here's an accounting firm working with a hockey team. So a lot of what we've done has been so far organic video with social media. The Columbus Blue Jackets have introduced, they have a campaign where they're running ads, which are hockey players telling bad jokes and trying to make each other laugh. And they're terrible. A lot of them have European accents. They don't quite get the jokes. If it's a pun, they're not sure. And we are labeled Schneider Downs as presenting this. So we're introducing a sequel. This will start running, depending when this podcast airs, I would assume it would have broken by then, which is accountants telling bad jokes. Because if there's anybody less funny than European hockey players, it's probably accountants and CPAs. And so we actually went to the Columbus Blue Jackets locker room, sat in the locker room, the same location, and had these accountants telling bad jokes, trying to make each other laugh. We also had a very fun viral video we did where our CPAs ran the streets of Columbus chasing the Columbus Blue Jackets mascot Stinger. These are not expected things. And it's so opposite what we're talking about, Chris, when I talk about digital advertising being targetable and measurable and you know what's going to happen. I don't know how to measure a CPA chasing Stinger down the streets of Columbus, but I know it's going to make people think about Schneider Downs in a different way. And maybe make them think about Schneider Downs, period. And so it's a lot of fun. Video is an incredibly engaging way to do things. And we work in an industry that's not very fun to talk about on video. Cost segregation studies are not fascinating video. So we're trying to do some things that are a little more fun and engaging and hopefully develop more LinkedIn followers, more engaged audience. So thanks for asking about it. I'm having a ball with that.
Yeah, I saw the running of the Bulls with the with the Blue Jackets hockey mascot. That was so fun. So as we wrap up here, Sean, and I thank you so much for all of your great information, but let us know how the audience can get in touch with you or learn more about Schneider Downs.
Well, thank you. Thanks for asking that. Two things. Number one, I certainly invite everybody to visit our website, which is schneiderdowns.com. SCHNEIDER Downs.com. The other thing I want to say is this. I'd love if anybody would like to email me or reach out to me. I've been associated with AIM for 15, 16 years. And what I have found is, and I've presented at AIM on this topic, and that same year when I went, I learned as much as I shared, but just by talking to other people. There's so many bright and intelligent people in this industry. And so what I really like to do is connect and engage with people. I think that's probably how Chris and I got introduced so we could talk today. So please be comfortable emailing me at smith@schneiderdowns.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I love to engage with people that way as well. So as you can probably tell, I like talking about this stuff. And if anybody's interested in talking about this or frankly any other topic, I'm usually good for a few words on most topics.
All right. Thanks, Sean. That's it for another episode of Amplify, the podcast, for accounting firm growth. A big thanks to all of you for listening in today. And again, thank you, Sean, for all of your knowledge. I really appreciate it. If you like what you heard, we'd love a review on the podcast platform you're listening to us on now. And be sure to listen to the other episodes in the Digital Lead Gen season. You can learn more about Amplify and our past seasons on accountingmarketing.org. Look for the podcast under publications. And if you want to learn more about me, reach out on LinkedIn at Chris Camara. That's Chris with a C and Camara. Or you can email me at ccamara@ipainsider.com. Thanks again, and we look forward to having you join us for another episode soon. Bye-bye.